Good morning, and guess who I found? Jeff Ketchum. He is back today, and because it's Texas OU week, and of course, if it's Texas OU week, we've got to talk about the quarterback because oftentimes in this series, Catch, quarterback ends up being the determining factor. Catch, we've been keeping a close eye, and of course, I specifically have been keeping a close eye on Quinn Ewers really ever since his injury occurred against UTSA. Feel like I've been doing this update every twice a week. But heading into Texas OU, I decided to kick the tires to find out where Quintavious was, and was able to find out here it is a couple of days before the Red River rivalry that Quinn Ewers. I was told as of this morning, Catch, 100% healthy heading into the Red River rivalry. I know Steve Sarkisian talked about it a little bit on Monday, and he kind of was like, you'll have to kind of see what happened because I think he wanted to play that song and dance. And then somebody eventually asked Steve, well, if the game was played today, who would be your starter? He's like, well, Quinn be a starter, right? So, but Quinn is, as of today, 100% healthy as he recovers from his oblique strain and abdomen strain. I asked someone like, hey, is there any lingering effects or anything to that effect? And someone's like, it's tiny, but not bad. Then of course, people in OB are like, tiny? What does tiny mean? Like, well, tiny means really small, right? So,
but if it's tiny, it can't be 100.
There is that, right? But
97.3.
Okay, that's 98.4.
Well, I'm just saying, you can't say it's 100%.
So semantical.
It's still a little bit tiny.
It's so semantical. I don't think semantical is a word, right? But nonetheless.
I think it, I fell for it.
Nonetheless.
It should be.
Everyone's like, what do you mean? I'm like, can we just go big picture for a second to say the quarterback is healthy heading into the game? So, Catch, as a guy who's been monitoring the Quinn situation as well, following it as well, when you hear that Quinn Ewers is 97.8% healthy heading into Texas OU, your thoughts are what?
Well, first of all, it's funny because before you posted the Quinn Ewers update, I was 3 seconds away from shooting you a message going, hey, might not be a bad idea for a Quinn Ewers update on the site today. So our brains were in line with regards to, you know what, that quarterback, he's kind of important. We should check in on that. This is why you protected him. This is why you didn't play him in the Mississippi State game. We knew as soon as the injury occurred that there was about a month-ish gap in between when the injury occurred and when this game against Oklahoma would take place. And Georgia next week, it's strange because we are going to build up Texas OU into this mega game. And it's possible that the real mega game will happen directly afterwards and that this isn't really a mega game. And then I did an interview in Nashville earlier today, and maybe Vanderbilt is the biggest game of them all when it's all done. I would expect him to be feeling better. This is, if I told you a month ago on the Wednesday of the Texas OU.
Oh, well, if you told, what just happened? Okay. Last thing you said is, if I told you a month ago.
Yeah. If I told you a month ago before that, right on the Wednesday before the Texas OU game, what would you expect of Quinn if you treated him with nothing but care, didn't force him back early, took no chances? You'd be like, I'd expect him to be close to 100% giddy up. And I think that's where he is. I think it's unrealistic to think that 100%, who the hell's ever 100%? Sure. 98.4 sounds good to me.
Man, I don't know what that feels like.
So I think Texas has its starting quarterback back. It sounds like this shouldn't be a problem. And with the rest of the season, we continue with.
Catch, when I was thinking about this game, right? And I've been thinking about it since my tenure, since I've been here. Catch, I can only think of, and I want you to, I need you to lead on your expertise here. I can only think of one time that I feel like the better quarterback didn't win. And let me know if what I'm missing. The only time I could think of since I've been here has been the 2015 game where Texas actually wins with Tyrone Swoops and Gerard Hurd, and they actually can't throw the ball at all in that game. And on the other side, they have Baker Mayfield. But somehow Texas pulls off this miracle. Texas only had one win going into that game. That ends up being the Charlie Strong crowd surfing, ET finger, golden hat kind of game. But overall, though, Catch doesn't typically, and again, whether my tenure or even predates me, because I'm thinking of Quinn going against Hawkins, and I feel like Quinn obviously should have the advantage in that game. The better QB typically wins this game, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I think we can go back to I think you can go back to 2018. That's the Kyler. Was
Kyler
it
Sam.
Yeah, I think. Look, Sam's not better than Kyler, so that's probably another. But on that day, and Sam was good enough that I think everybody gave him the respect that on his best day as a college player, he could be almost as good as anybody. It's just we didn't see those days very often. But I think the point you make is a really good one. I think there are far less. I think what oftentimes happens in this game is we get to the midpoint of the season and the two teams are viewed a certain kind of way, and it's different at the end of the year. So often, like last year was a legit upset. And we know that because at the end of the year, we know that Texas was better than Oklahoma. So that was an upset. But in most years, not all years, but it feels like for the last quarter century, at least 80% of the games have been decided and won by the better quarterback and the better team. And those two things usually go hand in hand. It usually, one team rarely has the better quarterback and not the better team. So yeah, I think you've got your finger on the pulse of this rivalry really well.
Yeah, I was just as I think of if you're Texas coming back, and again Quinn being 1-1 in this game. There's one thing I feel like if you're Quinn coming back, Catch, and I want to see what your thoughts are on this. The one thing that Sark talked about on Monday, he said sometimes how the beginning of the game starts isn't necessarily how it is in the end. Well, I think there's an exception to every rule, right? I think 49-0 would be probably the exception to the rule because how they started is pretty much how they finish, right? But last year, Quinn throws an interception on the second play of the game. And that seemingly gave Oklahoma just breathes life into them because about 5 plays later, OU scores. And Texas is playing from behind throughout that entire game. It really takes them to the fourth quarter, Catch, before they're actually able to catch up to OU. I feel like that becomes a thing this year where if you're Texas, that can't be a thing. Like you can't have first series, I've got an INT 2 plays in, because that seemed to be that just seemed to take the wind out of their sails. Contrary to 2 years prior to that, right? When Xavier Worthy on the first play of the game catches that ball and goes, 74, 75 yards from Casey Thompson. And then he scores, and all of a sudden they're off to the races. Like it seems like in some cases, at least in 2 out of the 3, that first drive ends up being a kind of a good indicator and gets momentum swinging in somebody's way.
It's a great point, Anwar. I think all things being equal, if you win the coin toss, defer is this game. Because as you talk about it, I was running through my head the number of games that I've seen where the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game is like a tsunami of emotion. More so, this is the game really more than any other, where in the first 3 minutes, it just feels like everybody's all jacked up on Mountain Dew. And the crowd's even more at a rapture than is throughout the rest of the game. It runs in conflict in a certain, or at least like head on, with the fact that we know that Steve Sarkisian's at his very best in the first quarter. That it's been a thing in the past where he's so good in the first quarter and then things taper off after that. And it almost feels like Texas is one of those fighters that comes out first couple of rounds. If you can survive the opening rounds, you can find yourself in a fight. Texas has been that kind of team in the past under Sark. Doesn't feel like that's who they are this year. But, it wouldn't surprise me if Texas came out and raced out to a four. But think Michigan. Michigan literally was the defensive players were turning around and looking at each other like, what is this? Guys are just running all over the field with the ball. We can't stop it. Texas can do that to anybody. So you would think that the first quarter, they want to make a statement. They want to create separation. They want Oklahoma to chase. I wonder, though, is the thing you're talking about going to neuter that approach? That if you call early, is that when the big mistake can happen? Because we know that we've seen it a million times happen in this game. I'm literally, there are games racing through my mind where that first couple of minutes turnover occurs. Yeah. It doesn't always decide the game. I mean, Xavier Worthy's touchdown Texas didn't win that game. But you think back to a year ago, it did create a situation where Texas played chase all game long. And in the end, they caught up, but then they lose. And you look back and you go, well, you know what? Texas doesn't lose if the first quarter doesn't happen. So I just think they almost have to survive the first quarter, which is a very passive-aggressive thing to say. Because there's also a part of me that thinks they need to just come out and let it fly. But there's a lot more risk in that. There really is. Because I think over the course of 60 minutes, this Texas team is better. I'm actually working on a story right now, and I want to ask you a question.
Okay, like this.
How many players on this Oklahoma team start for Texas?
Oh, you know what's so funny? We are.
I'm in the middle of it right now.
This is so funny because Jason and we had kind of a similar conversation yesterday, and I think we kind of came up with. I think they have a decent linebacker.
Stutzman would be a starter.
Stutzman would be one. We couldn't come up with anybody really on the O-line.
Oh, there's not.
Couldn't come up with any of the receivers.
There's not.
Clearly, I contended that Trey Owens might be better than any of the quarterbacks that they have in the room. And I feel like I can make an argument, Catch. I feel like I can make a strong argument on that as far as that is concerned. They had a defensive tackle that I think Texas was interested in. That I think if through the transfer portal, if he's still the starter, hasn't done nothing special. Was it Dominic or something like that? I forget his name. I think it was a defensive tackle. Again, I've only got two at this point. Definitely none of the DBs.
Well, Billy Bowman. I think if you in a draft, I would probably take Billy Bowman over both of the Texas safeties.
Hold on. I think it is.
But I'm the point though.
But it was Dominic Williams. Williams was the guy that I was thinking of.
You don't need two hands to count.
Oh no. I'm out, right? I'm out. Like it ain't.
Now look, Anwar, I'm gonna post this story. And if Oklahoma were to win this game, it will be thrown in my face well beyond my death. That in 2147, 100 plus years from now, it will be the thing that gets brought up, maybe more so than anything else. They'll say, remember the time that Kesh did an all 22 and picked like a couple of guys, and then Oklahoma won the game. But the reality is this is the most outmatched Oklahoma team on paper that we've seen in this game since 2005.
What about Brendan Thompson? Could he start on this year's team?
No, he's not even in the rotation for Texas, I don't think.
Okay. I'm just trying
to. He's not better than DeAndre Moore. He's just not. And Brendan Thompson is good. And this isn't to say that Oklahoma doesn't have good players. They do. The question is, in an all 20 combined all 22, how many of them are better than the Texas players? That's the rub. It's not that Oklahoma doesn't have good players. It's that you can go man for man, and Texas comes into this game winning the lion's share of the matchups. And I think Oklahoma fans would have to concede that. Is there even one on the offensive side of the ball? I think you can make a case there's a handful on defense, and there probably will be. Stutzman, Bowman, Dominic Williams. They've got good players on defense. You could maybe even get to a point, Oklahoma fans might even say half of the guys on, it would be 6 and 5 or something like that. Oklahoma fans might argue. But on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think there's a single player that Oklahoma will bring. And it's not to say they all suck. There's not one player that Oklahoma plays with on offense that would start at Texas. Now, if all of their receivers were healthy, maybe there's a conversation to be had, because I actually think that Burks, Anderson, Farouk, I think those guys are all going to play in the NFL. But would any of those guys be better than Isaiah Bond? And Brendan Thompson's in that DeAndre Moore space. Would he be better than DeAndre Moore? Would any of these guys be? You could almost roll out the Texas backups with Ryan Wingo and Silas Bolden. And Silas Bolden would be the best receiver on this Oklahoma team right now. And he'll catch maybe a pass or two in this game for Texas, because there's an overwhelming amount of talent there. No, I mean, this is
what's interesting, Catch. I'm going through it. I'm looking at the preseason all SEC teams. Oklahoma only had 2 guys from first through third team, and the 2 guys that they had were both first teamers, and that was Stutzman and Bowman, and they didn't have anybody else listed on a second team, on a third team, anything to that effect.
And one of the things I think it tells you, if Oklahoma's doing a keys to the game, Stutzman and Bowman have to be out of this world good. Their best 2 players have to be not just flawless, they need to be impacting, creating turnovers and big plays, and an upset almost has to funnel through them. If it doesn't happen, this is a game that gets out of their control. And the thing that the difference for Texas is that Texas just has a plethora of players that if you tell me that Colin Simmons doesn't have a sack in this game, doesn't change the way I think about the game at all. If you tell me, Isaiah Bond doesn't have a big game, well, go back and look at that 49-0 game and look at Xavier Worthy's numbers. They weren't big. On that day, Texas's best wide receiver didn't have a big game, and they still won 49-0. This is a Texas team that has so many good players, impactful players, compared to Oklahoma, that there's very little margin of error, room for error for their best players. Their best players have to be epically good. And look, Stutzman was really good in this game a year ago. He has to repeat that trick. And then they need a lot more to happen beyond that. But
all right,
think about it. Bowman and Stutzman have to be all-America level good on Saturday.
So I'm going to allow you. Let's blend our 2 thoughts together, and what you is your expertise and the thing that I usually lean on when it comes to this conversation, right? Which is the recruiting aspect. And you'll go into super blue chips, right? I always lean on talent development. Now, one of the conversations I had with Jason the other day was, I have felt like since I've been here that Oklahoma has done a better job of developing their talent. because Texas
They
has
have.
recruited well.
I mean,
yeah, right.
All those Big 12 championships are the evidence that they do a better job of developing their talent.
So, and Texas has always recruited well since I've been here. Hence the how many 5 stars does it take to beat the TCU kind of thing, right? So, but my question is, and one of the things I asked Jason, I asked him, like, do you feel like there's been a shift under Sarkisian as far as the talent development is concerned? Because I feel like Oklahoma has recruited well. Like Oklahoma hasn't fallen off or anything I've seen, Catch, from a recruiting standpoint. They had a 5-star quarterback. Texas had a 5-star quarterback, right? I mean, they got Vasusi, who is committed to them. So they're not recruiting poorly, but is Oklahoma has their biggest fall off, Catch, when you look at the blue chips and everything like that? Is it been the talent development standpoint? Has that been the biggest change? I'm just kind of curious.
There's a couple of things, and this is you're right. You put the ball on the tee for me. And then you removed all of the outfielders, and you just told me to swing away. Two things are happening here at once that I think are really critical to what's the discussion between Texas and Oklahoma. Let's start the first and foremost. Let's just talk about the talent. On paper, Texas has twice as many super blue chips as Oklahoma.
Okay.
Oklahoma has 10 on its roster, and Texas is, and that puts them. And look, that's not terrible. They're 9th in the country in terms of super blue chips. So it's not destitution, right? Did I just make up a word, by the way? We could put that right next to the word that you created.
Yeah.
Texas is sitting at 19, but that number is growing. So on paper, Texas goes into this game with twice as many impactful raw talent players. Now comes the development part, because it's one thing to have a high number of super blue chip players. It's another thing for those guys to be developed. Let me read you the Texas Super, because I think this is incredibly important. This is the story of Texas football, and this is the reason why they are number 1 in the country right now, because Texas does not have as many super blue chips as Alabama. They don't have as many as Ohio State. They definitely don't have as many as, like, Georgia has 28 and Ohio State has 29. So on paper, there should be a difference between those two teams in Texas. Mm-hmm. But listen to the Texas Super Blue Chips.
Okay.
Quinn Ewers, Isaiah Bond, Colin Simmons, Ryan Wingo, Jonte Cook, Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad, Derek Williams, DJ Campbell, Kelvin Banks. They're hitting on their guys, Anwar. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to have a super blue chip come in, and that doesn't even include Arch Manning. It doesn't include young guys like Jelani McDonald or Derek Williams, who are really good players at this point, really at young points in their career, but they're not starters yet, right? Texas is hitting at an exceptional rate with its super blue chips. So when you hit on those guys, you don't just get good players, you get stars. Yeah. Now, let's go to Oklahoma's super blue chips, because I think when I read you these names, you're going to understand what's happening here. Okay. Jason McCullough through the transfer portal, the only super blue chip. David Stone, Taylor Tatum, Jackson Arnold, Samuel, I can't even say his name, Omosigho, Jaquez Petaway, Gentry Williams, Billy Bowman. There's a couple of guys in there that you're like, that dude can play, but there are many more where it's like, that guy's not really going to have a big impact on the game on Saturday. This is the difference between the two programs right now. Texas is acquiring better talent, and they are developing it better than Oklahoma, who's not recruiting as well. And then on top of it, they're not in this short window, these two teams, not the last 5 years, not the last 10 years, all of that combined, advantage Oklahoma. in this cycle that leads us up to the 2024 season, Texas is blowing Oklahoma away in both measures. They're getting more elite talent, and they're developing it better. And other than Bowman, you can look at the Oklahoma list of super blue chips, and there just aren't guys that are going to make an impact on Saturday. And the big one, the big flashing one is Jackson Arnold had to be good. He will probably never play for Oklahoma again. And when you look at Texas and the super blue chip at the quarterback position, their backup quarterback is Arch Manning. He's already on his way to being a major success. And Quinn Ewers could be the best player on the field on Saturday at the most important position. And he's ascending to his zenith as a college football player. Texas has a number of guys like that who are approaching their zenith. Kelvin Banks, Anthony Hill, Colin Simmons, all these guys are ascending. Oklahoma has very few of those guys on their roster. And it's why when you watch an Oklahoma football game, it doesn't look like they've got a bunch of difference makers playing for them. And when you watch Texas, it feels like every game there's 4 or 5 guys that were difference makers that were different from the week before, because there's just a constant flow and cycle of really elite level talents playing really, really well and being developed to play at their apex. And I think that it's one of the most underrated components of what Steve Sarkisian does. Everybody talks about the offense. Everybody talks about the recruiting, but the development part, it doesn't just happen. It takes, because we've seen Texas teams with Oklahoma level talent, quite frankly, that they've got right now. And we've seen those teams go 5-7 or 7-6 or 8-5. It's one thing to have the talent. It's another thing to coach it to a position where they're getting the most out of it. And I think that's the most exciting thing. Because what I would say is, on paper, Ohio State and Georgia should be better than Texas. But Texas is hitting at such a high rate with its super blue chips. The math says you probably go 50-50 on them. But Texas is doing more like 75-25. And Georgia and Ohio State are kind of hitting the national norms. So Texas has been able to climb up and play at a level with Georgia and Ohio State so far this season from an eyeball test standpoint, right? You watch Texas, they look badass because they're hitting and developing at a higher rate than those two monster programs are. But it's why any of those 3 teams played each other. If Ohio State and or Georgia played Texas tomorrow, I think Vegas would view those as almost pick'em games. On paper, they shouldn't be. But to the credit of this staff, they've mitigated that difference in the roster with really great development and coaching. Kudos to the Texas staff.
So let me do this, Catch, because I have some super chats in there. If you could do me a favor, though, I go to your teams and go to your direct messages. I sent you the Oklahoma depth chart. That was as of the Auburn game. Can you go through that list that you have of Oklahoma blue chip guys and tell me where those guys currently are on the depth chart? Because I know where all the Texas guys are.
Yeah,
but
it won't take long. There's only 10. So
okay.
It's not like the exercise will take forever. Dason McCullough has been hurt. So he's listed at 3rd team will linebacker for Oklahoma. He's kind of been the Trey Moore of the Oklahoma team, in that when he transferred from Indiana, he had a remarkable freshman season. It hasn't happened for him yet. In fact, Trey Moore is better than Dason McCullough and healthy. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. It will tell you a lot. David Stone, 5-star defensive tackle from 2024, is 3rd team defensive tackle. Taylor Tatum, if he's healthy, he's listed as 4th team running back on their depth chart for the Auburn game, but that probably has to do with the injuries. I think Oklahoma's hopeful that he has a breakout game. Jackson Arnold, backup. Peyton Bowen is a starting free safety. So there's one. They've got a defensive end. I am not even going to begin to try to Poju Adebawaymore. I apologize to his family.
Yeah, it's okay.
He is third team defensive end. Then you've got Samuel Omasaju, who is he's their starting cheetah, and he's one of their better players.
So that's 2.
You've got Jaquez Petaway, who at wide receiver, I don't see any. I don't. Oh, he's second team slot.
Okay. So plays a little.
You've got Gentry Williams, who is a corner, and I don't see him on the depth chart. Maybe he's hurt. Okay. He's just not listed among their top 11 DBs. And then you've got Billy Bowman, who's obviously their starting free safety.
So you got 3.
That's it.
You got 3. You got 3 who are starters.
3 of their 10 are starters. So if the national norm is 50%, that's just ballpark, right? It's a real easy number to work with. Their super blue chips right now are panning out like basic 4 stars.
They're 30%. They're 30%. It's 3 out of 10. It's easy math, right? 30%.
That's basically slightly above what a low 4-star the projected hit rate would be.
Okay. We have some.
Now look, a guy like David Stone eventually might develop into the player that we thought he would, Taylor Tatum as well. But coming into this game, they've got 3 of their super blue chips who are going to have significant roles in this game with absolute certainty. Whereas on Texas, if we just go to the starting offensive huddle, you're talking Quinn Ewers, you're talking Isaiah Bond, you're talking about Kelvin Banks, you're talking about DJ Campbell. You might have at any point Jonte Cook or Ryan Wingo in the lineup. So almost at any given time, half of the players on the Texas offense are at that level. And that's before we get to the defensive side of the ball and your Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill and Malik Muhammad. And, it's a long list.
All right, let's knock out some of these super chats here that have been waiting. Oscar, he goes a little off topic here, but he says, hey, NCAA just announced elimination of NIL. You and I were talking about this before the show. Scholarships and deals will replace it. What does that mean for the CFB?
I don't think it means a lot. I've never been a fan of the letters of intent because what it really is a letter of restriction. The moment you sign a letter of intent as a player, you've given away your rights. And it's why a guy like Deuce Robinson, who when he went to USC, I don't think he ever signed a letter of intent. Mm-hmm. And you think about a guy going all the way back to a guy like Terrell Pryor, who was like, no, I'm not actually going to announce on signing day. I'm going to go at my own pace. I'm going to wait and see what happens in the offseason, see what happens with coaching shakeups. Mm-hmm. So what it means is you can't screw these kids anymore. That if you're a coach who's getting ready to take a job 36 hours after National Signing Day at another program, that does now if that coach does that and a kid goes, wait, my position I literally just signed my letter of intent on Wednesday. It's Friday. What do you mean he went to Georgia? Yeah. Now, if those types of things happen, these kids have the control to then say, okay, well, then I'm not going to that school. So I think it's a matter of fairness. The idea of a national letter of intent, it allows the coaches to put their head on a pillow at night and sleep because these guys can't. Now, we've seen guys like Xavier Worthy sign letters of intent, sign with schools, things change. And we have reached a point in 2024 where it's pretty taboo to not let a guy out of a scholarship. Mm-hmm. Like they do that now, but it wasn't that long ago when those things weren't happening at all.
Catch, it wasn't that long ago when Baker Mayfield was a walk-on who tried to transfer.
Exactly.
And Cliff Kingsbury was like, nah, man, I'm going to screw you over. And they're like, wait a second. That guy doesn't even have a scholarship. and you're doing this to him? Like, yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
I think what it does is it kills National Signing Day, which, if I'm being completely honest, for the last few years has been pretty boring.
It really has.
We do these recruiting shows, and it's like, this guy just turned in his facts. But it's like, what does that mean? Like, so it just means that the way we feel right now, guys are committed. It may mean that visits go on longer. This idea that the finish line is in December and then it's over, you could, in theory, have guys taking visits. Now, what will the official visit windows look like? Even then, guys can say, okay, well, then I'll just take an unofficial visit on my own dime. And if I want to go see Oregon in spring practice, it means the top players in recruiting, especially the ones that don't enroll early. That's the other elephant in the room. So many of these guys do enroll early now that it won't change a lot with them. What Texas had 5 of their guys last year out of 24 that didn't come early. So 19 of 24, I think, was a number. They came early, and they were already on campus in January. So the national letter of intent thing doesn't affect them at all. They'll be on campus. For the guys that wait, though, in theory, those guys can go through spring workouts and say, you know what? I'm going to wait and pick a college based on after I evaluate spring football where I'm best suited to show up and potentially have an early impact. So I think there will be a few things that it changes. I think by and large, it won't change a lot. Most of these guys are Jonah Williams plans to be an early enrollee at Texas. He plans to play baseball in the spring. He won't sign a national letter of intent, and it won't change anything about what happens with him. Now, if there are guys that say, I'm not going to come early, I'm going to do the anti-arch. I'm going to stay for prom. I'm going to play basketball and baseball and finish my senior year. Those guys can change their minds much later than they ever would have before, because the national letter of intent is a contract that takes away all of their viability and power and gives it all to the school. And now that doesn't exist. And I think it's probably long overdue.
And the thing is, Catch, I've been saying this for years. You and I have been doing shows for years, and I've written this before. The NCAA is making an effort to give power back to the players for one specific reason and one specific reason alone. They're saying you can have everything that you want, just don't come after our money. So this is what the NCAA is about. So
and they don't want to be sued. So there's two things.
They don't want to be sued.
The big daddy of them all would be to sue them for their money, but there are other components of this. They don't like lawsuits because they keep losing.
They keep losing all of them. So there's a couple of things. They don't want to lose a lawsuit, and they don't want you to come after their TV money. So here's why. That you want to know why the transfer portal exists? It's because they're like, you know what? We're getting tired of getting sued over that. You want to know about why NIL is here and it's not going to change? And people going to talk about, they're going to put restrictions in there. Okay, good luck. Good luck telling a young person that what they can or cannot make. The NCAA is like, man, y'all can have whatever you want. And these old coaches who are used to having the power, that's why I always say Steve Sarkisian has the advantage, because he's used to an NFL model where players are in control. So because of that, I don't think this bothers him. It's an easy transition. For a guy like Nick Saban, it's a harder transition. And he has to leave the sport because they're just used to Catch. I mean, I know it's a morning show, but they're just used to dicking guys over. And now in this new world where they can't do that, they're like, man, I don't even know what this looks like. So anyway.
I hate to take this back to a place where it's like Catch is getting racial, but the college football and athletics setup was mostly created, the scholarship agreement, how the sports works. it goes back to before a lot of things in our country occurred. For instance, a lot of this stuff was established and kind of created before the 60s or the 50s. Like, things happened in those decades where people were getting more rights, right?
Mm.
But college athletes have been long restricted in ways that in any other fashion in our everyday life, we'd go, what do you mean? For instance, Texas is a right to work state. If I have a contract with Anwar Richardson that says if Anwar breaks this contract and goes to work for any place in the state of Texas, if I put in the contract, Anwar can't work in the state of Texas, and he breaks the contract, guess what? The state of Texas, I can sue Anwar if he took a job somewhere else.
And 24/7.
Correct. I could sue Anwar and I could do things to delay it. But the state of Texas is going to say, we're a right to work state. Anwar can go. There's no courtroom in Texas where I would be able to restrict Anwar, even if it was in a contract. They would say, Anwar's got to feed his kids. He's got to pay his bills. You can't keep him from doing that. So we live in a world where there are unions, and we live in a world where states are saying, no, you can't keep people from living their lives and trying to better their situations. But we have lived in a world where college athletics, where there have been so many restrictions that it blows people's minds. It's like, what do you mean the play? We saw on game day that the coaches and the people on the set were complaining that the players have too much control. Do you know what that really means? They have some control, and the people in the sport literally don't know how to react to what a world looks like where players have some agency. And it's about time, because what this will do is keep the shade. This will limit some shadiness, because we've seen it a million times. You can literally set your watch by it. It's a joke. The day after signing day, assistant coaches all over the country announce moves and do their things. And why do they do it? So that their old schools don't lose the prospects that they had been recruiting. How? Because they signed this legally binding document that gives away all of their rights and gives them nothing other than the security that they get to play football at the school that they've been committed to. But in general, that shouldn't be a problem, right? Unless the schools are going to do even more shady things and say, oh, we've decided you don't have, and that does happen occasionally, right? Where a coach will just decide, yeah, you don't actually have a scholarship here. But most of that stuff happens before letters of intent. This would also allow guys, if something like that were to happen, schools will be, I think, better established to leave a little bit of wiggle room, right? We're already seeing schools leave room for transfers. So if things happen with high school athletes at this level and they need to make post-February decisions, I think schools will be able to plan for that now, knowing that, hey, we should save a couple back just in case, whatever.
Yeah. Catch Barb's 10 says, hey, Catch, talk me off a ledge. All the sense you're making about UT being superior is making me nervous. No banana in the tailpipe, question mark. Hashtag battered fan syndrome. And by the way, I feel Barb's, because I there's two things. Catch will laugh on this, but Catch will know. Can tell you how I've become a good believer. I laughed and just mocked Catch a couple of years ago throughout an entire offseason about Texas going to Arkansas.
I was wondering where we were going with this.
And I mocked him. I'll admit when I'm wrong sometimes. And I belittled him, was like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Now, fast forward a couple of years later, I'm like, yo, man, that Arkansas thing, man, I don't even know. That's a hell of a tough game. They're like, man, Arkansas is, man, I don't know. And so now when people are talking about Texas OU, and they're talking about a 14.5 point favorite, And I was talking to Jason the other day, and he was like, man, Texas is going to blow this team out. I was like, man, I don't know. I don't like to talk. I don't like the sound of that conversation. Just the sound of it makes me uncomfortable. I'm okay with Barbs. Barbs, you and I are in the same boat. But Catch, are we just being is it just PTSD?
I need to go check on my dogs for a second.
Check on your dogs.
Hold that thought. I will be right back.
Okay, check on your dogs. All right. Catch has got to make sure he doesn't have an intruder in the house, because ain't no telling what the hell is going on there. Barbs, I will let you know two things. One, I am 100% with you. I'm a naturally skeptical person. I'm a natural skeptic of everything. Like, if something seems too easy, I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want it if it's too easy. It's like that Tupac thing. Remember that Tupac lyric? What did he say? Touch me, tease me. I don't want it if it's that easy. Something to that effect. Someone's got the lyrics for me. So Catch will come back and give you that. And Barbs, we will absolutely come back to your super chat. So while Catch is doing that and handling his business, let's talk about the other business of buying a home. Eric Sells Homes DFW. If you're looking for a house in the DFW area, you just say, I want to live closer to the Cotton Bowl. Okay, maybe you just want to live out in Frisco or Arlington or anything to that effect. Check out Eric Sells Homes DFW. He will absolutely take care of you. He's a friend of the show. He's a guy that he's got kids everywhere throughout the state at different colleges, even at OU. So don't feel like, oh, he's a Texas guy. He's not going to take care of me. Looking to buy a home, looking to sell a home. You go ahead and tell him your favorite Unc sent you. Eric Sells Homes DFW. If you know somebody in the area, let's go ahead and tell them to check it out. Eric Sells Homes DFW is buying and selling made easy. Catch? I'm sorry. That's me. Is anything okay?
Yeah. My wife. Were you guys hearing the dogs barking?
Oh yeah. But okay. It's kind of white noise for me at this point.
My wife, we've got somebody coming over the house in maybe 10 minutes.
Okay.
To do some service work. So my wife left, but she locked the dogs outside, and my dogs were having conniption fits at being locked outside and not able to get in the house. But it sounded like literally an army may have been in the back. I didn't know that. So all I could hear was that in a distance, the dogs were barking, and it just turns out they were pissed.
Okay. Hey, we got the recruiting show coming up next, so we got to clear the deck. Can you just give them your thoughts real quick, Catch?
There's PTSD. Nothing I can do about the battered fan syndrome. It's too recent. So I feel you, Barbs. There's nothing I can do that's going to talk you off that ledge. I can tell you that Texas is the better team. I can tell you that if they played this game 10 times, Texas would win 9 of them. I can tell you how big of a gap there is in the quarterback play. But you just lived 2 decades almost of Texas football misery. Not quite 2 decades, but not that far away either. So you're just going to have to win enough over an extended period of time that the battered fan syndrome subsides a little bit. I would tell you, battered fan syndrome for the Longhorns in the 90s, it took about 5 years of Mac Brown having success before that kind of went away. And even then, Oklahoma was beating Texas consistently. So, look, it's sports. The reason why we love them and hate them at the same time is because it is a form of gambling. I mean, you show up and you think you're going to win. That guy that will go to Vegas and drop a $100,000 bet that will only pay him $500. He's like, oh, easiest $500 I'm ever going to make. Yeah. You can still lose. It happens. And so brace yourself. There is risk. But here's what I would say. And I said this today on the radio show that I did with Bill King in Nashville on War. Texas can lose its next 2 games, Oklahoma and Georgia, and then win out, and they will be in the college football playoff. And the system has changed in a way. Alabama fans don't need to be metaphorically suicidal because they lost to Vanderbilt. All that happened was their wiggle room, a little bit of it got eliminated. But they can still lose another game and still make the college football playoff. I think that should ease your nerves a little bit, because even with a loss, it won't be the end of the world. And even if they followed that with a loss next week, it would feel like the end of the world. But the reality is, Anwar, you and I would still be doing a show, and we've done a bunch of them in the past. All of their hopes and dreams are still in front of them. They can still accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish. While we laugh about it, though, it is true.
Catch, I do not want a world where we're talking about a must win against Vandy. Okay. Like I don't want that world, but here's a world, Catch, that maybe you can tell everybody about, because it's a world that you're going to be in and Chad is going to be in. Will you want to tell them about the watch party that's taking place at the Austin, Texas Card House?
The new Texas Card House social. Can't wait. It's going to be fun. They've got, the thing is, on where they have the big, I've never watched a game on a screen as big as the one that they have at the Texas Card House social. It's one of the biggest screens in Austin. They advertise it as the biggest screen in North Austin, which I wonder who in the hell has such a bigger screen that they have to keep it to North Austin. I don't know, but it's a monster screen. They're going to $1 draft beers. There are going to be drink specials, $2 jellyfish. And yeah, you can mention Orange Bloods and go play some cards, $1 memberships and 1 hour of play on Texas Card House. So like, you don't have to be a poker player, but if you are, you can go do it without the normal cost. But if you just want to show up, have a fantastic sports bar type scene, we're going to be having a good time, and it's going to be on a monster screen. And one of the things I'm kind of excited about is I hope we're going to be able to set up cameras. So if there's a mega moment in the game and the crowd goes crazy, we can put that stuff on social media and maybe have one of those little viral moments. So it's going to be a lot of fun, great food, really, really inexpensive drinks, and a screen that you can see from Lubbock. So come out and join us. If you're not going to the game and you're in Austin, come see me, come see Chad. We're going to have a good time at the new Texas Card House social. It's a fantastic, it's like 20,000 square feet. And a lot of that will be guys playing cards, but a big chunk of that will be reserved for us sports football fans to just have a great time.
$1 monthly memberships available, and it says the first hour of play on the Texas Card House. Catch, you're a guy who likes to play cards, so I know that's got to be good. Hey, Catherine says she's single. Catherine, perfect place for you to go. Like you'll have guys fighting over you. It'll be.
Can I give Catherine a compliment?
Sure.
I can't remember where I saw it. Actually, I can. There was a recent Hook'em Hotties photo of her.
Oh, she made that list?
I got to say, she looked fine in that photo.
Really?
I'm 48, married with kids. Like, I can say things and it not be kept trying to get his hustle. Believe me, of all the things in the world I need right now, like a torrid love affair with a member of our viewing audience isn't one of them. So I can just say with brutal honesty, I thought she looked pretty fantastic in the photo. If I were a younger man without responsibilities, I would have slid into the DMs. But as it is, I'm just saying, nice photo on Hook'em Hotties. It looked good.
I think maybe that's why I was so skeptical of her. That was like, attractive women in Austin can't find a date. That's BS. So, but hey, I'll have to check it out.
Dating is different in 2024 than it was 20 years ago.
Attractive women are attractive women.
But I saw a video yesterday on Twitter where a woman was complaining because a guy that she'd gone on a date with for like a couple of times, it was National Parent Day. He sent her flowers. And the card was from her dog. And she was like, who is this guy that I've only had a date with twice who's sending me flowers? And it's like, wait, what? If sending flowers is out of bounds now, I don't know how I would be perceived.
There's a lot of defense. The people are very defensive in dating now. Like, they look for one thing. It's like, he called me in the morning. Like, what weird person is calling me like so early because he said he wants to talk? Like, ugh. So yes, you have to here. There's a lot of battered people who've been talk about battered fan syndrome, battered dating syndrome, catch, and then here's the difference, dudes. And even women, they have so many options on these apps. Like, they're talking to like 6, 7 people at one time. Like, everybody just, especially dudes, everybody just going for the hot hand. And like, they're talking to 3 people, trying to set something up for a Wednesday night. Whoever comes through, they just ghost everybody else. And like, that's where I'm at tonight.
All I know is it was like, wait a minute. So a guy that you've literally gone on a date with twice. So you had a first date. It went well enough that you were like, yeah, let's see each other again. That guy tried to do something nice for you, and you're judging him because he got creative and signed the note as your dog. Like, I would be in a world of pain because I got to be honest, Anwar, my courtshipping consisted of me being nice.
Like, oh yeah, nice is considered weird. They're like, why is he so nice?
See, I'm with Tyler. Tyler's like, dating sounds exhausted. I'm 6 months away from 10 years being married. Yeah, man.
Man, this catch, you know what I would tell all my married friends? All right, we gotta go anyway.
I told you that in 10 minutes someone was gonna be at the house.
All right, we got the recruiter show coming up next. He's got the dogs going crazy.